On day 4 today, we've had some amazing discussions over the past 3 days. We've discussed finance, we've discussed technology, we've heard young people talk, we've heard people who've been in the space, people who use this space. And I must say, this is one of the first conclaves that Dhriti has been able to organize where we have so many women panelists. It has been a target for us all these years. We have, I won't say succeeded fully, but yes, we are much closer to our dream. And I also know, I've been privy to all the conversations that happened in the past 3 days. I know that just the angles and tangents that we've been able to explore because women were present on these panels were amazing. We are just hoping we'll be able to put this all together in some readable, comprehensible format, digestible format, and share it back with all of you. But for today, we are going to lead the discussion into a completely new realm. I'll introduce that in just a bit. Before that, I just want to say that Script for Her is an initiative where we are trying to bring young minds in the country to solve or come up with solutions for rural women entrepreneurs. It's a collaboration that we are seeing between these two seemingly disconnected groups. But I think the energies that we've been able to create in the young people and the understanding of the problem that we've been able to do with the rural communities, I think we are hoping that there will be some breakthroughs. It'll be the beginning at least. Script for Her has been possible because of some wonderful partners we have on board. We have NASCOM Foundation, we have Impact Hub Manila, we have the Her and Now project at GIZ, we have Nusocia, and of course we have Dhriti. So that's how Script for Her has become possible. Moving on to what we are doing today, I just want to share a little story before we get into the thick of the discussions. For the past few months, 6-8 months, I've been working very closely with incubators all across the country. And I have been working with them to explore gender-sensitive practices, women-centric incubation. And this is a story that I was told in one of the sessions and remains very close to my heart. So it's, I won't name the incubator, it's a pretty successful incubator, academic institution backed, and the infrastructure is amazing, the plan is amazing, what they wanted to do, the way they wanted to position it was amazing. A lot of investment went into actually bringing up that incubator. And when I started talking to them, they acknowledged that they do not have enough women applicants. And they had acknowledged that in the past as well, probably not thought through it so much. During our discussions, they actually shared with me a very interesting thing. They said, so because we wanted this incubator to be huge, we wanted this to be a state-of-the-art technology, we wanted this to be well equipped, we actually located the incubator off the city limits. But now we realize that women can't access it because there is no public transport available from the city to the incubator. Women can't access it because a lot of women from the context of that incubator wouldn't be allowed to stay over at the incubator. It's not safe for women to travel early mornings or late evenings from that incubator, even if they have some form of transport. Which meant that this huge facility and that huge investment remains completely unavailable to women entrepreneurs in that context. And this is just a small example. I am privy to a lot of these stories now because of my work with incubators. And this is the context of this discussion today. We all understand the importance of entrepreneurship. When Dhriti started 16 years back, people couldn't spell entrepreneurship. Fortunately, we are not in that state. Today, entrepreneurship is a buzz. We are all talking about entrepreneurship. I remember we used to have a dream. Everybody in India will want to become an entrepreneur one day. That is what Dhriti used to say when we were young and sort of crazy. But I think I'm seeing that now. What I'm not seeing and what all of us are here for is it an equitable situation for women entrepreneurs as much as we've been able to move the ball for the other genders. So that's the context pretty much. And I want to introduce today's panel. I'm so happy to see a lot of women on my Zoom window with their videos on and off, but I know there are women behind everything. I'll probably go in the alphabetical order. We have Ankita Pegu, who's the program manager at NSRCL. She manages the Women's Startup Program. We also know that she's been able to mobilize and support a huge number of women entrepreneurs. So we want to hear all the secrets from you, Ankita. Jinan Lilani from Wilgrow Innovations Foundation. She's the head operations and diversity and inclusion. I think she's been able to really push the envelope there and include diversity and inclusion as a conversation in the incubation space. We really want to hear from you, Jinan, your experiences of starting and running these conversations. And we have Sucharita Kamath, Sucharita from Andy, and who's currently serving as the India chapter manager of Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. So she just doesn't support women entrepreneurs directly. She actually supports organizations like a lot of us who then in turn support women entrepreneurs. So really, Sucharita, your value add to this, apart from everything else that you will bring to the table, your value add will be telling us everything that you've seen in all the different entrepreneur support organizations. What are the good and bad things that we've been able to do to really support and strengthen women entrepreneurship nationally and globally, actually. So with that, welcome all the panelists. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to place my first question, and my first question is actually to all of you. We can just go in whichever order, alphabetical or whoever is ready first. But how did your organization decide to either focus dedicatedly to women entrepreneurship or dedicate some part of your efforts to women entrepreneurship? How did you decide that? How did you reach that decision point, and why? The floor is open to you.
I'm happy to begin. Firstly, I just wanted to say a big thank you to the whole Script for Her team and partners. I think having a conversation like this with different types of stakeholders is really, really necessary, because that's when you're really getting the kind of support you need to take it ahead. In terms of Wilgrow, as an incubator focused on social enterprises, focused on early stage social entrepreneurs, we've been in this ecosystem for about 20 years, and we've learned a lot about what does it take to do incubation well and take entrepreneurs from stage A to stage B and allow them to actually scale. I can speak for how long I've been in Wilgrow, which is for a bit over 4 years now. And I think what I realized when I joined the organization was, so we've over these 20 years, we've had about 25 to 30% of women-led enterprises in our portfolio quite regularly. And I think because of that presence, it did not maybe occur to us that there needs to be a focused effort on making sure that there are women entrepreneurs in our portfolio, but also it was not by design. So when we realized that, yes, we do have 25 to 30%, that's certainly that number can go up, but how did they get there? And if it's not by design, that also means that perhaps next year that number will drop. Right? So how do we make sure that our incubation program, which we take a lot of pride in, is accessible to entrepreneurs, in a gender equitable manner? So I think once we sort of realize that the design element in how we select, where do we source our pipeline from, that sort of recognition changed things for us. And that's where we started to really look into the pipeline generation efforts. And I must say, organizations like Dhriti and Andy have done a tremendous amount of work in helping us make sure that our pipeline of women entrepreneurs has become stronger. So since that recognition came, it sort of embedded into everything that we do, right? From who are our ecosystem partners when we look for pipeline? How do we assess? What kind of networking opportunities are we providing to, our incubatees, and are they designed in a way or are they prohibitive in any way, like maybe the example you mentioned? So I think that's where it came from for us. It came from the recognition that while internally in the organization we may have a great gender balance, and in our portfolio it seems like our incubation is supporting women entrepreneurs. If it's not by design, that in itself is the problem. And that's when we decided to actually have a strategy to make sure that it's incorporated very strongly in everything that we do. And stop there.
Thanks, Jinan. You've raised a very important keyword, and I'm going to keep going back to that one in my further questions. But Ankita, Sucharita, whoever is willing to go next.
Yeah, I'm hoping your keyword is by design, because that's what I intended to pick up on as well. Yeah, for us at Andy, it's actually some of what Janan's referred to, right? So we were seeing this. We turned 10 years in 2019 globally as a network, and we said, okay, let's take stock. What are the patterns we're actually seeing when it comes to this entrepreneur support organization space, right? But I think the demand was sort of from two sides. One was what we were seeing, right? So some of these trends, the fact that programs weren't being done by design, that women's voices weren't being heard, etc., etc. And I will share some more of those details. We have something called the Global Accelerator Learning Initiative, which is a program that we ran across 5 years. We're now in phase 3. We're continuing to run it. But it was, I think, one of the first where we actually tried to sort of collect data and make decisions and, bring out some of these insights based on data that we collected across 23,000 entrepreneur support programs, right? Incubation, acceleration programs across the world. So, coming from there, what was that data telling us? And therefore, what did we need to do as an organization? And it was a resounding, hey, if you don't actually look at this in a focused way and by design, you're not really going to be able to move people. There's too little being done across the world, right? Not just in India. So that was sort of one sort of the external motivation. But I think the other is that Andy's always been, in fact, when we look at gender balance, it's been the other way, right? Because it's been a very women-dominated organization. Yeah, at one point, we had more than 80% of our staff actually being women. Yeah, which is a bit of an anomaly. I think you will accept that. We rarely see that. But then we started asking ourselves, if we're talking about gender balance, that isn't really balanced, right? And we had conversations started there. But I think because we had so many women, there was this push that said, if we are, what are we doing? Even internally as an organization, because if you don't do that, then you will not have some of these design questions, right? What you alluded to, Nidhi, about this incubator being set up, way out there. I think some of those would have been if you had those conversations internally. So I think there was a push internally saying, okay, what are you doing as an organization? If we are, and these are issues, how do we make the case with funders, right? Which is unfortunately where the power lies very often in terms of their ability to influence these ecosystems. So I think it came from both sides, and I'll pause there.
Great. Thanks, Sarita. A lot of questions coming in my head. I'll keep coming back to that. Over to you, Ankita.
Yes. So IIMB has been a management institute. So we have been running a program called the MPW, which is a management program for women entrepreneurs. And around 16 cohorts were already run. And that's when the idea of building an enabling environment for women entrepreneurship came about. And we started in 2016. In fact, the Women Startup Program, we wanted to experiment with ventures or the women entrepreneurs based out of Karnataka, and it was a huge success. So we decided to go ahead with the next cohort, and right now we are enabling around 200 or 300 plus, in fact, women. So I think what really pushed us is that how Indian women have kind of leveraged the strength of their community, right? Because they haven't always been very good in networking, and to reverse their dire situations and securing a better future for themselves and for their families. I think that's really something which we found out during the MPW program. And why not go with a structured format of having, enabling these women kind of, because they are educated at the same time, and also they want to take the risk of having a new enterprise with the help of financial institutions or commercial banks. So we thought that apart from mentoring or any kind of support, I think it's also very important that they're financially independent, because that's what, pushes them to take up a new business as a challenge. So that's how we started in 2016, and yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far.
Great, thanks, Ankita. What I heard, and I'll talk in keywords. You were right, Sucharita. The first keyword I heard was design, because so many times it's women-centric initiatives, not just in the incubation space, but anywhere, seems like such an afterthought. That let's include them also. Enough numbers nahi hai, औरतों को भी बुला लेते हैं, or government wants us to do it, so let's open it for women also. It seems like such an afterthought. I feel design should be one of the keywords here. The other keyword I heard was women's voices at the table, and I think Andy, then Sucharita is a great example of. I think the whole idea of having women centricity wasn't really a forced one, because there were always women at the table. There were always women driving these decisions, so that perspective always came in. And the third keyword I heard here was user-centric, or user-focused, because that's how I think NSRCL just even understood that there is a need. So you hear what your users are talking about, and you identify that, and you build your solutions from there upwards. So amazing. And Ankita, I just want to continue with you, because you started this, but how do you think this program, and we were talking briefly before the session formally started, how do you think this program, the Women Entrepreneurship Program at NSRCL, differs from another generic incubation program?
We have actually a more detailed approach. So we start with an online MOOC course that we call it, for a 5-week of online course modules, where, right from building their entrepreneurial mindset. So somebody just thinks, oh, I have an idea now, I have 10 business ideas. Now how to go about it? So we kind of developed that entrepreneurial mindset in them, and then where, a lot of these 10,000 women had go through this entire course modules, and then finally they drill down to that one business idea that they want to carry forward, and then they experiment on their things that they have learned. It's more like a do while you learn, right? And then they'll be focused on developing their venture and scaling their product during the incubation period. So what really sets us apart is the workshops and the sessions are planned according to the need assessment and the maturity of the ventures. So I think it's more about the milestone settings. We also have something called the Buddy, where women entrepreneurs from NSRCL or from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 program, where they kind of buddy these women who are very skeptical about going ahead with the venture. So it kind of motivates them. What really also sets us apart is a peer group for knowledge sharing. I think we do a lot of activity-based sessions. We try and encourage them to engage themselves in the give back initiatives, and because NSRCL is centered around IIM Bangalore, it's very important for us to also kind of help the women entrepreneurs from different parts of the country. So it's a sector agnostic, and it's a pan-India program. So we have tied up with a lot of other partner institutions across India, so like other IIMs. So we have right from IIM Bangalore to IIM Jammu, IIT Guwahati, iCreate, and IIM Nagpur, IIM Vizag. So you don't need to relocate to India, because we feel that there's a lot of local support and mentorship which is required. I think that's we go for a more structured approach in terms of helping the ventures right from the ideation and landing to where they are right now.
So just a follow-up question, I'm curious. So when you do this needs assessment with your women entrepreneurs in the cohort, do you hear things which are drastically different, or some things which are drastically different from what, say, a cohort of male entrepreneurs would share as their needs?
Yes, I think one good thing which I really kind of resonates and kind of keep hearing is they're very persistent. Women are very persistent. Women are very good and multitask oriented, which men are not, and they're very patient with the process. So they kind of understand that it takes time for a venture to grow from the way they started. So I think they naturally also know that they need to wait in order to get positive outcomes. So these are the things that kind of differentiate from the male counterparts.
Great. Thank you so much, Ankita. Jinan, my next question is to you. And I know diversity and inclusion was something that you were personally passionate about. And then could you just share that journey, how from a personal passion you've been able to see that, converting into an organization agenda, and then how has it actually then rolled out as nuts and bolts into an incubation program?
It's a large question. I'll try to keep it crisp. So when we sort of realized that okay, this is not happening by design, we spent some time looking into, as an incubator, where can we play a role in influencing diversity and inclusion, right? Where are we best suited? There are many things that can be done, but when you're thinking about entering into the space, we wanted to see how we could play a role in areas where we have strengths, where we can actually make an impact first, and then take it further on. So we looked at three things. One was workplace equity. So within Willgrow, do we have that gender balance? And like Suchata mentioned, we've actually had a very, very good gender balance for a very, very long time. It's been 50-50 within the organization, but what was interesting to see was that at a leadership level, at a board level, it wasn't. So one of the first things we did was to look at that and to say, how are we setting up our middle level management within the organization to have that growth path to leadership? That was number one. And the second thing is our board, right? So over a couple of years, we were able to change our gender balance on the board from being 100% male to 50-50. And that's had a tremendous impact on the organization and the way the organization is thinking about different things. So that was one piece. But the other two were on increasing the impact on women at the bottom of the pyramid. And the second was on increasing access to finance and markets for women entrepreneurs. So for bottom of the pyramid, what we're doing is we basically got trained by an organization called Value for Women on how do you apply a gender lens to SGBs, to small and growing businesses, to see, can you do an assessment of their value chains to see where more women can come in, and can this result in a larger number of women micro entrepreneurs being created? That's been a fascinating journey. We've been doing this with 6 social enterprises in the productive use of energy space. So these are all companies whose appliances are solar powered, but they have the capacity to actually be revenue generating and livelihoods generating opportunities. And we are applying the gender lens to see from the number of end users of these appliances, how many are women? And if it's a low number, how do we increase that number? Do we have more sales agents of the company who are women? Do we have more women who are fronting, talking about the technology and who have made, this technology actually available? So that's been a fascinating journey. And we are already seeing that the number of rural women micro entrepreneurs that are being created is increasing as a result of this gender lens that we apply across the value chain. So that's the women at the BOP. When it comes to women entrepreneurs, we've seen within all social entrepreneurs, regardless of gender, one of the biggest areas where entrepreneurs struggle is access to finance and access to markets. As an organization, we've been trying to see how can we crack that, right? And how can we crack it at a larger level, because this is not something that only Willgrow Incubating Space, it's something that all incubation programs are finding difficulty with, all entrepreneurs are having difficulty with. So what we are starting to do now, and while we're taking market access efforts at an ecosystem level, we wanted to find out how is this different for women entrepreneurs, the access to markets and access to finance. So what we're actually doing now is we are going to be working with an organization where we'll be conducting research to look at exactly that segment. For women social entrepreneurs who are at that stage where they are ready to enter markets, what are the barriers they face, and how can an incubation program address those barriers, right? Because we are aware of things like, okay, where do business meetings happen? They happen after an event, over drinks, or they happen on the golf course. That's where you meet decision makers. Women entrepreneurs have expressed time and again that, look, I need to talk to the decision maker, and who's going to open that door for me, right? There are many networks that are trying to do this, but we need to do much more in terms of getting that entrepreneur foot in the door, right? So that is something that we know, we have some knowledge on, but we don't want to begin a market access program designed for women entrepreneurs without knowing exactly what that should be. So we're very excited about this thing, which we're just starting. It's a research program that we're doing, which we're just starting to assess what are the main barriers, and specifically how can an incubator like WillGrow play a role there. Based on that finding, we're going to be designing a market access program, a access to finance program, specifically for women entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Jinan. And you really did make it very crisp and very to the point. We were able to get a sense of all that WillGrow is trying to do in various spaces. Governance is definitely one of the red flags when it comes to women centricity in the incubation space. My personal experience also just reinforces that, and a lot of incubators I have been working with have come to realize only after these conversations that, we don't even have a single board member who's a woman. Our entire team is men, but we want to launch a woman-centric program. So yes, governance is definitely one of the things that probably we need another panel discussion for. Moving to Sucharita, and Sucharita, my question, I'll just probably broaden the question for you a little bit, because you will be able to give us a peep into a lot more spaces than just Andy. So I have two parts to the question. One is, when Andy supports entrepreneurship support organizations, do you have a conscious agenda of promoting gender sensitive practices? I'm a part of gender labs at Andy, and I know the kind of discussions we're having there, but how does it generally play out in the Andy programs? That's first part of the question. The second part of the question is, you would have seen entrepreneurship support organizations along the spectrum, right? Along the spectrum of gender transformativeness. What do you think works, or what are organizations able to do well if they are able to create a gender transformative ecosystem? So two parts.
Right. So, Nidhi, your first question, sorry, if you can remind me again, because one was trying to remember. So the second one is maybe something I should take first, right? So what have we done well when it comes to gender transformative programs? I think, unfortunately, it's a little too early to really be able to answer that question, Nidhi, because I think we're really only starting that journey now. No, funny to say, but after 10 years, at least as far as Andy has existed. So we've spoken about it, but it's been very superficial. It hasn't been by design. And I think in many ways, we have not had the courage to put our money where our mouth is as well, right? And when I say us, I'm talking about the entire ecosystem. And some of these take time, right? So Ankita was talking about an entrepreneurial mindset. I mean, we have constraints. When it comes to incubation, there's only so much you can do. But you really can't change mindsets over a 5-week program, right? I see some questions in the Q&A about, what does this mean for rural enterprise? We haven't even started discussing that, right? I think when it comes to transformative programs, we would have arrived when on this panel, Nidhi, you don't see a Sucharita, Jinan, and an Ankita who are having this conversation in English in India. Right? I think that is very, very indicative of the issue that we have at hand. But the point I'm trying to make is this is something that has to start early. And the reason I'm bringing that up is Nidhi spoke about young people and how this Stood for Her program is supposed to be for them, right? That's where we need to start. We need to start at the schools. And we do not. We have not, at least in India, really even begun to have those conversations there, right? So a MOOC program or a 5-week program or something that's built in needs to start there, because this is a cultural thing and you will not change mindsets by doing it at the incubation level. Having said that, we do the best that we can, right? So I think we have to start somewhere, and that's great. So I would not want to answer that question, which is, what has one really done well? I will say the few things that we think are easy, I think are ones that we need to consider as low-hanging fruits and really institutionalized, right? Sorry, some more jargon, but ask us as every time, right? My one big thing used to be, people say, what is this one point? I spoke about gender disaggregated data collection, and I will keep talking about it because it doesn't happen. It was great to see it as one of the 8 learnings that I saw on Wilgro's nice video about what have they actually learned when it comes to incorporating the gender lens. Disaggregate data. We don't do it, right? If you did that, simple things like we have a balance at every level, right? What are our ratios, whether it comes to senior management, whether it comes to decision-making positions, whether it comes to anywhere. I mean, that's something which would have been easy to have been answered, right? Now, obviously, it's not being done, right? So there are a few of these, I think, which seem to be very simplistic learnings, but I think they're very, very important because they don't happen enough. So that's my answer to the second part of your question. Sorry, remind me what was the first again.
Yeah, so the first question was around when you support other organizations in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. Is there a conscious effort to promote gender sensitivity, or is it happening as part of evolving as part of the process? Where is it?
So I said we did 10 years and we re-looked and we looked at ourselves, right? So what we actually identified, apart from the work that we've been doing, which we continue to do, right? Where are the gaps when it comes to supporting the SGD, is what we call identifying 3 urgent issue areas, right? And gender equality was one of them. So what that means for us then is that we internally then look and say, every time we design something, there are 2 others, it's climate and environmental action. So obviously for us, top importance would be the intersection of gender and climate and environment. Just to give you a sense of how we look at it, right? Which means that every time we go out and either when we raise funding for a gap that's identified, or when we have conversations with entrepreneur support organizations, what we try and do is bring these lenses back, right? Okay, in everything that you're doing, by the way, third urgent issue, in case you're curious, is around what are decent jobs and how do you define those, right? How do SGBs as engines of growth, how are they creators of decent jobs and how should they be creators of decent jobs, right? So we try and look at this intersectionality of so then gender and decent jobs, right? How is that nuanced and how should it be different and what are the kinds of conversations? Yeah. And as an example, Janan spoke about value for women, but I know we at Andy have been looking for a support organization like them that specifically focuses on gender and value chains. Yeah. But also how do you apply the gender lens, right? And it is with the deep amount of regret that I must say that there aren't too many of them. We've actually looked across to say who are, right? So I think folks like NSR Cell, when you're designing these programs, should actually, because we're not, Janan, Ankita and myself have lived experience as women in the workforce. Maybe some of us as women entrepreneurs, but maybe not, right? But we aren't experts. We aren't people who have understood that space, who have spent time wearing those shoes. How do you actually bring these organizations? How do we have more such organizations there who can actually work with entrepreneur support organizations to help them design better, to help them design with the users, right? So if the users are women micro entrepreneurs, how do we design with them? We cannot design with them sitting in urban centers having conversations, right? Another thing that Ankita brought out, so there's the power of the network, right? I think the IIMs have great power, but those networks are by default currently also exclusionary in nature. That is unfortunately the reality. How do we create networks for the far more women entrepreneurs that are in rural India that currently don't exist? I saw a question from someone at Seva, right? And I'm sure we'll come back to them. But we need to have that happening, and it cannot happen with us sitting, arm's length removed from in urban centers, not actually putting these entrepreneurs and organizations at the heart of it, right? So do we have entrepreneur support organizations actually designed for women, rural entrepreneurs, micro or otherwise? I think the answer is there to be seen. Right? So it's those kinds of not just conversations and hard conversations, but the next level of how can we then have these with the people who have the power to be able to change that, whether it's policy, whether it's the government system, which really currently, if you look at the incubation space, it's really dominated by that. How can we have it with the Niti Ayogs and the Atul incubation centers and the tinkering centers? How do we by design create them in a way? And that's something we try, I think, to do, right? I think we're, like I said, very, very, very far away, even if you take just India as a context, and even further away when you look at this sort of global.
I can just add to what Sucharita said, because what she talked about in terms of the lack of organizations which have this knowledge and how to do it, it's very, very severe. And as she mentioned, when we were looking for people who could help us learn how to do this, few and far between, right? We were lucky that we had a strong donor who was willing to support this, who was willing to put in those resources to allow us the time and the money to be able to do it. And now, when we've reached this point, I think one of our biggest learnings in the last year has been that the role of an incubator and the power that an incubator has to influence gender inclusion in SGBs is enormous. Incubators are at a position where they build a great amount of trust with their entrepreneurs. They walk the distance with their entrepreneur. Yes, they may not be in the same shoes, but they're at least standing next to the entrepreneur. And that position is very powerful when it comes to talking about how do you apply a gender lens along that value chain? Why do you do it? How does it make business sense to you? Forget the moral aspect of having a gender balance in the workplace. How does it make business sense to you? And when entrepreneurs start to see that, hey, actually, I should be looking at my women micro entrepreneurs as a segment, as a market segment. Why have I not done that yet? That flip that happens is incredible. But the role of an incubator it's really powerful what the incubator can do. So we're actually also now seeing in our incubators program, and we're supporting other incubators, how can we rope in what we've learned over the last 1 year so that it's integrated into training other incubators, so that we're not talking about gender smart incubation, even though we know we've applied that to make it gender smart. But what the audience is listening to is, this is how incubation is done. This is the right way of doing incubation. That's something that it's so powerful, can be so powerful. It's something we really want to do, within the next 1 year, we want to get started on. But I think it has a tremendous amount of potential.
Completely, Gunjan. Instead of making it sound like a social cause as something that has to be done, so that you can have a peaceful sleep at night and you can tell everybody how good I am. That's not the point. The point is that it does make business sense. It should be done. That's the only way it should be done. And I think you've put it beautifully. And I just want to extend this thought and say that a lot of the teams, the on-ground teams as incubators, just look at themselves as, employees who are there to, run mentoring programs, coordinate with resource people, organize capacity building sessions but to my mind, all of them as individuals are, they are change makers. Actually, they're torchbearers of this whole process. So if we can also build that kind of ownership and pride in the teams at incubators, saying you're not just, it's not just a job that you're doing, you're actually trying to change the whole ecosystem for the better or the worse, whichever way you want to proceed. So I think that's something that I would like to say. So Charita, you want to add something? I thought you wanted to say.
No, not really. I'm just looking at some of the chat messages and the Q&A. So
yes,
Nisha, just to clarify.
I just wanted to add over here is, sorry, Sucharita, you wanted to add something?
No, I just wanted to clarify, to Nisha's comment that, Nisha, I completely agree. And I acknowledge that, right? We can afford to have this conversation now at this point of time because you have the NSR sets and you have the vehicles. Could we have had this conversation 10 years back? Certainly not. So just wanted to be clear that I'm saying that since we are now actually here, let's try and push the envelope, like Janana said, like in terms of how we see ourselves and how we can actually therefore influence now the ecosystem to go beyond what we're doing. Yeah, Ankita, over to you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree on few aspects, because apart from the mentoring and other kind of support that we give, which is into the business side of it, I think it's also very important to recognize the psychological needs of women, right? And how they are able to express. So I think very, very important, because when you're talking about, the rural areas, or where, there is a very much important or a sound knowledge of the local technology is required, and tradition and culture, which are sustainable for economic development. I think that's very, very important for us to keep a touch on that. And that's also the reason I think IMB has NSR Cell is a part of IMB, but IMB has a lot of other initiatives as well, in terms of working at the grassroots level, getting into the villages in Karnataka and Maharashtra, where some of these women, I think from our cohort itself, has kind of nominated themselves and tried to address those basic the hygiene checks that we need to do in terms of building an entrepreneurial mindset. So I just wanted to add on that.
Thanks, Ankita. And I think the questions in the Q&A box, what all of you are saying is just, and my next question on my paper that my team has asked me to ask, I think everything is now pointing towards rural. And it seems like it's the burning question of whether structured incubation programs for rural women entrepreneurs, is that a possibility? Is that an immediate need? Or is there just a stretch of imagination? It's not possible right now. Where are we? And I think I'll just open it to all three of you, your views.
Absolutely not a stretch of imagination. Maybe I think it's already happening. Sometimes we use, I think, fancier words. So, the Sevas of the world have been doing it. I think we're just learning and asking ourselves, how do we get better at that, right? And to me, I think it is really about, now there are some infrastructural challenges, right? Which one is not so, especially in the light of COVID. I was trying to see how long I could go without bringing that up, but unfortunately, that's a reality, right? But so many people moved online, right? Everything needed to become digital. But what happened to these rural enterprises, right? How did they actually deal with it? I think these are questions that are harder to answer. And I just to say that I think there are some challenges which need to be handled at a different level. So we won't get into that. But despite those, right, there are folks, like Sevas or the Jagritis of the world that actually are looking at incubation and what it means for the rural entrepreneur, right? Micro, medium, what it's like. But that I think requires very different design, and Ankita's referred to some of that as well, right? Which is how the rural, especially woman entrepreneur, her journey is very intertwined with the community. So recognizing and designing for that, right? What does it mean? Janan referred to access to markets as one, and I think the access to markets element has a very strong overlap with some of these infrastructural issues that I've spoken about, right? So I think that is something that needs to be addressed there far greater than in the private space, which many of the sort of incubators and accelerators operate in. But I think even beyond that, if you delink that and you look at this design and what does it mean, and access to finance, which Janan referred to, right, for them to sort of sustain and grow. So I think how investors, and let me use the word funder rather than investor, right? Because I think there's a stage where these enterprises need to be supported far more by grants than they will traditional private capital, whether that's debt or whether that's equity. But even if you get into that space, right, what are the unique funding needs of these enterprises? I think those conversations are very, very early stage, right? What is the size of funding that you actually need? We have the Andy-Andean conference happening in parallel actually right now, later in the afternoon. And there was this conversation around simulations for investors, right? So have investors walk through that fundraising process from the eye of a woman entrepreneur. But right now, the woman entrepreneur, the persona, is very much urban, peri-urban, educated, English-speaking, PowerPoint reading, blah, 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 tech-savvy, access to digital. You get the point, right? So how do we make those simulations in the eye of a rural woman entrepreneur? I think these are questions that we can very much answer. If you see the advancements that have been made, whether it's India Stack or all the stuff that is actually happening in that space, I think we are really poised to make this happen. And I think we need to find some more of those funders that Janan referred to, right? Who have the courage to say, and that's why I say I do believe that at this point, you need a lot more grant funding coming in.
Right.
I think in light of the latest CSR laws, this is an opportunity for Indian corporates to really ask themselves, how can we not do the checkbox ticking funding stuff that's actually happening and use these grants there, right? Because we're being increasingly pushed to raise funding within the country. I think it's good, not everything is a perfect solution. I know when the CSR law came in, there were conversations about, hey, is this just going to be, it was just a checklist at that point of time. It was 2%. But now, we start somewhere and you see how I think corporates are being asked to really justify how that 2% is being spent, right? So it's a process, and I think we're really ideally placed with a few of these coming together to push us to do some of that really path-breaking stuff when it comes to the woman rural entrepreneur.
Absolutely, Sucharita. And thank you for all that reinforcement, because rural is something that will need all of us. I want to move to Ankita, because there's a question which I will club here, a question in the chat box, which says, even incubators who focus on women-specific programs are heavily urban-centric. How do we enable them to reach to rural women entrepreneurs? So coming from NSRCL and running a program which fits this definition, do you think your women entrepreneurship program can just move or expand to rural context, or what's your
Yes, I think we are already doing that. So as I mentioned, we have already, some of these women have already kind of working in these grassroots levels of the villages or the rural parts of India or Karnataka and Maharashtra, where they are kind of trying to see how they are able to implement that. And in fact, I am not very sure if I'm allowed to even disclose it, but most of these women will also act as buddies for these COVID video initiative that we are doing. So I think these are all micro entrepreneurs, and I'm really looking forward for the group, because that's what have been also part of the Give Back initiative as part of a program structure. So I think what also really matters is the kind of training program. I think Sucharita has also touched upon that. It's a continuous, it's not just, we are done with the incubation. I think the continuous monitoring and improvement of the training program is very essential, right? Because the lifestyle of a woman of entrepreneur distinctly differs from the 9-to-5 job, because it's a multitask oriented role, right? So I think that's very, very important, because and very, very essential to continuously monitor their entire journey once they're also incubated. And so I'm really hoping for the women to kind of support and try and see how their ideas are being implemented there, and how can they work together in bringing a more balanced, in fact, just disrupt the social cultural barriers that we have.
Absolutely, Ankita. In fact, Dhriti, when we started in 2004, we started as a much more rural-focused organization, and our focus on rural continues. We actually moved into the urban incubation much after, doing a lot of rural incubation and a lot of women-centric rural incubation. This was 16 years back. So I completely agree with what you're saying, and I know that it cannot be superimposed. We can't just, do things in the cities and then just say, okay, so this has worked, let me take this to a village in Borbetta. It cannot happen. So completely agree with you there. I want to add on a question to Janan's original question.
If I may just add to both what Suchi said and what Ankita is talking about in the conversation on, being able to support in terms of incubation rural women entrepreneurs. I think now it's the best time to really do it. One of the biggest reasons being, we have seen a proliferation of incubators in the country over the last few years. Many of them are based in areas which are not your tier 1 cities.
Right.
Their teams are all people who understand the regional and local economies better. It's a fantastic time for incubators like that to be capacitated, both in terms of incubation methodology, what does it take to really support women rural micro entrepreneurs, how do you assess the value chains to make sure that women at the BOP are being impacted. But another fantastic point that Suchi brought up was on CSR. Kind of opportunities that CSR has now to influence rural areas, local economies, regional economies by working with these incubators it's insane. So there's no better time than right now to make sure we get it right. How do we make sure that these new incubators that are coming up are really able to, galvanize the local economies, the regional economies by virtue of their presence, by virtue of their local knowledge, by virtue of working with entrepreneurs that are based there? How can CSR also start playing a much more active role here? So I just wanted to...
Yeah, no, very, very relevant actually, because we have these tier 2, tier 3 incubators, located incubators, which are neither urban the way Bangalore and Gurgaon incubators are, but not exactly rural, but they have this window, they understand the rural context much more than somebody who's, absolutely metro urban. And that's the opportunity, both for the incubation ecosystem as a player and the other supporters, including CSR. So I think that's the opportunity that's in our face right now, and all of us should leverage it. The continuing question for you, Jinan, is it's there in the chat box also. Any experience with the women entrepreneurs from the informal sector or women collectives? And I also want to just connect it to Wilgrow's a slightly innovative, I would say, approach to building rural women entrepreneurs. I was a part of one of those conversations earlier where you said social entrepreneurs, building rural women entrepreneurs, so that chain. And that's a slightly different approach to strengthening rural women entrepreneurship, and then in turn working with collectives and informal rural women entrepreneurs. So what your learnings there, and what's your vision there?
Yeah, so maybe I can just get a little bit into how we do it. So we work with 6 companies in the productive use of energy. I'll give you one example. A company that is, they've created a food processing machine, which is solar powered, and multiple different types of food processing. The only thing that it cannot do on solar power is boiling, but everything else, cutting, slicing, juicing, everything, it can be done solar powered, right? So this is something now that's off grid. It's in your rural area. It's something that women in those rural areas can purchase and start their business with, right? So a lot of these companies who have similar types of devices which are off grid, which don't depend on electricity in rural areas and can generate livelihoods, the social entrepreneurs and the social enterprises, without that gender lens, or rather by applying the gender lens, start asking the question, how many, like what Suchi talked about, like gender disaggregated data, how many of our customers have been women? How many of our end users are women? How many of our sales agents are women? Within the team, how many are women? How do we communicate? Where do we communicate? Is that communication being consumed by women? By asking that question, simply with that needs assessment, not the needs, the gender assessment that we did with these companies, we just simply asked these questions. And by virtue of getting that data in itself, it was an eye-opener for social entrepreneurs saying, oh, this is interesting. We have 50% of our end users are actually women here. They're also the customers. But our sales agents are completely men. They are going during times and to locations where women are not present. So can we increase sales by having more women sales agents? Can our sales agents be structured in a way where there are 2 women who go together instead of 1 man, like how that is happening, so that there's a sense of safety? Can it happen at hours which work for the women? So that change in mindset that happened just by simply asking the question of getting that gender disaggregated data across your value chain, it was an eye-opener because it gave you immediate areas where this can happen. And now these 6 enterprises, by doing this, by changing their processes, their structures, their systems, they are looking at tremendously increasing their customers, which means what? Which means the number of micro women entrepreneurs that are going to be formed as a result of this are going to tremendously increase. So our learning has been, as I was talking about earlier, number one, as an incubator, very important role to play. But number two, there are some very, very simple ways and simple mechanisms of applying a gender lens where you're talking business. And when you talk business, that's what makes sense to the entrepreneur. So, many of them are they were very hesitant to do this with us. They said, look, if you're going to do these gender-based trainings and sensitization trainings and all of that, it's not a priority, right? And it won't be a priority until you talk in the language of business. So we started talking in the language of business. We stopped talking sensitization trainings, and they themselves came back and said, hey, you know what? Actually, for me to be able to get the right commission-based sales agents and do this, my team needs to know why. My team needs to understand this. Can you all do a training? That's
Right.
when it happened.
Amazing. I think that's just the way, Jinal. I'm so happy that you've been able to turn this conversation around and make it more, like demand oriented than pushing it down people's throats. We have lots of questions, but one common thing I see in the questions is a lot of our viewers, listeners want to know about schemes or ways in which women entrepreneurs can get financial support or market connects. Are there any top of your mind? We will of course share more links with them separately, but are there any top of your mind connections or resources that you want to share? Just open to all of you. So Charita has already shared something in the chat box. I can see that. Anything else?
Well, without wanting to sound salesy, we will be hosting Unconvention conference in January, and this year it's going to have a heavy focus on access to markets and finance. So we're structuring it in a way where these opportunities will be much more available, and considering our D&I focus, we're certainly going to be looking at how that can have an interplay there. So look out for that. And you can also reach out to me individually. I'd be happy to see if your enterprises, we have a good network of investors that we've developed through our iPitch program every year. So if it's aligned with any of the investors we know, we'd be happy to make those introductions. We do them quite proactively.
Right. There is, Jinan, do you want to share any link where people can read more about Unconvention or reach out to you? We can just share that in the chat box.
Yeah, I'll just share our website link as soon as it's up. As soon as Unconvention the dates are up, it'll be on the website.
Sure. We also have someone, I think, who's logged in from US and is offering support. He or she, Summer is saying, anything I can do to help you all while in the US. So Summer, if you want, you can put your email ID here and we can all reach out to you actually.
I was actually going to tell Samar that, I think this is probably a conversation that people will want to have one-on-one with him. So yes, I think that's a good idea, Nidhi, because I know there are a few entrepreneurs themselves, some of them are a little larger, who actually have India entities. I know Wilgrow has just registered their US office and so the reaching out directly would certainly help. Thanks, Samar.
Great. And we have a minute left, and I want to start with the question that actually appeared first on the Q&A box, but I reserved it for the last. I love questions like these. So Aditya is asking, for true equity and equality, doesn't it make more sense to promote incubators, more generic incubators, than promoting women-specific incubators?
Oh, yes and no. I love that question as well. I think you need to get to that stage, right? And I say, when we talk about equality, that's not how we are. Socially, we're not imbalanced, right? We're supposed to be roughly 50-50. So eventually you get there, but I'd always use sort of the affirmative action model, right? There are reasons why nations across the world have used that, because when there has been a prolonged period of discrimination, intentional or unintentional, it then takes a prolonged period of having to set that right? There's this lovely image where you talk about equity and equality, right? Because when you're not at the same space, you need to give them that leg up first so that then you create a level playing field before you can then talk about equality. Yeah, so there's a need for that balancing to happen first before you do. But I think eventually the aim needs to be, you can't have gender equality and equity conversations with just the women. You can't, right? You have to involve the young boys and the young girls and the men in our lives, because they are in everybody's lives. But there's a period that I think we need to go through to get there, right? And you need to do some of this in parallel as well, right? That's why I keep reinforcing, for some of these, you need to start young, right? If we as mothers create these gender stereotypes and say, son, only you can do this, and daughter, only you can do this, and this is off the table for you, we will never get there no matter what you do there. So these are complicated issues that need both of that. Sorry, that's a very long response to that question. But we need something to happen first before we move into that. We need to design for women. And if the design for women says that we shouldn't be women only, then that's what we need to do. But I think you need to ask and it's different, right? One part of India, what you hear in the metros will be very different from tier 2, will be very different from small villages, will be very different from the south of India to the northeast of India. The answers will all be different, right? It's not this one homogeneous question with one standard, solution fits all.
Yeah. So let's create the level playing field first. That's what Sucharita says. Jinan, Ankita, what's your take?
Fully agree. Nothing more to add. She took the words out of my mouth.
Ankita, you're saying something?
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think Sucharita has just bang on. She's put on the things, because we also have a normal perception. It has to be. The question itself is so very, very relevant in today's scenario, because we also tend to get overwhelmed and carried away. Okay, it has to be women, completely women. No, that's not the scenario at all. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Oh God, I don't want to stop this here. I don't know about the others. I am personally learning so much. I probably will be able to write a book after this. Yes, Charita, you have something.
No, there's a question from Sujata. I know we're a little over, but it feels a little unfair to not. So this is my take, Sujata. Are there areas where women entrepreneurs get advantages? Sorry, in my point of view, there aren't any. There really aren't any. Every piece of data, including what happens with women entrepreneurs who go through an acceleration programs, it's there, irrefutable. Currently, there really are no advantages. And that's my take, given what I've seen over the past 20 years, at least in this space.
Thank you, Sucharita. And thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone who was here listening, posting questions, engaging in the conversation, offering help. I think that's how a real ecosystem comes together. When we are not just here as passive listeners or observers of the process, but we want to really engage in whatever capacity we can. Thank you so much, Jinan, Sucharita, Ankita. I think we need more women like you in the incubation ecosystem, definitely. Because we know it's a long journey. We know that it's going to be phased out. We know it's not a level playing field, but we are also the ones who are actually going to create it. Thank you so much. I had come into the conversation with very high expectations, but I think I'm even more delighted after the conversation, because even with all those high expectations, I've been, I'm just so happy with the way this discussion just went. And I'm also happy because I know these are things that we have been discussing in silos, in probably our own organizations or with people in smaller meetings. But let's now make this the conversation, because that's where it needs to go. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Yes, Sucharita.
I was just going to say thank you, Nidhi, and also sort of a shout out to Jyoti and the work you have been doing. I've been hearing this conversation about incubation and supporting entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs in the Northeast again for many years. It's almost gotten to a point now where I'm frustrated, saying, hey, when can we move from the talk to actually seeing more of these? We are seeing. So kudos to you for hanging in there, and I hope you will be able to get more organizations to support women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general from the Northeast of India, and that we actually move from talking to a lot more action.
Absolutely. Amen. Sucharita.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thank you for having us here. It was great, conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nidhi, you're a fantastic moderator. Thank you so much.
And we all should meet otherwise as well. We are meeting, I know, in the Gent Labs, but apart from that as well, and do more exciting stuff together. For all of us who are here listening to us, we have another amazing session happening tomorrow where we are going to share our work around the women-centric ecosystem that we are trying to build in Nagaland. So Sucharita, if you are interested, then that's one little peep into what we've been able to do. And the idea is that such ecosystems should come up in all states, and we should be able to take this conversation to a policy level. So watch out for this space tomorrow. Thank you everyone for being here, and hope to keep in touch with all of you. Bye-bye.